Gardens don't just appear, they're considered, they're created, and ultimately they're an expression of the person who makes them a reality. So this episode is dedicated to the gardener behind the garden. Back in August, I visited the garden of Maiju in County Kerry and made a video all about it. So if you haven't watched that just yet, go back onto my channel page, watch it, then come back and watch this. But we talked about so much and I recorded so much, and really I'd expected that the garden was going to be lovely, but I wasn't prepared for quite how brilliant it was. I learnt about the garden, but more importantly, I learnt about Maiju herself, how she got into gardening, how she built up the experience she has, and I came away with a lot of ideas. But I just wasn't able to fit all of it into one video because I did have so much. So I thought I would share some of the great stories and advice that Maiju had, starting with how she came into gardening.
So I think I started my own gardening journey a little bit because I was maybe perhaps thrown into it from the point of view that I always grew up with families with gardens. So one side of my grandparents and the grandaunts, they all had their private city gardens and they were keen ornamental growers. Sort of that's where the roses come to play, because they all would have had their roses, their clematis and loads of fruit trees. So I think that side got me into the beauty of things and perhaps the scent side of the likes of roses and so on. And one of my grandaunts was definitely the first one that showed me how to propagate a rose, because it wasn't such a simple thing back in those days to just go to a garden centre and just buy another rose bush. And obviously winters being more severe in Estonia, where I'm originally from, you did have to protect the plants over winter much differently than we do here in temperate climate, really. And then my other side of grandparents would have been smallholders. So they would have been growing everything literally the opposite of what my city grandparents would have been doing. And they would have had sheep and potatoes and cabbages and peas and all that. So spending summers sort of weeding in one place and spending summers looking at flowers in the other, I think that's where the combination for me personally came from. But at the same time, when my city grandparents passed away, and they passed away quite early in their 60s, unfortunately, we moved into that household, and somebody needed to sort of look after their garden. They had loads of gladioli, foxgloves, roses, as I said. And none of my parents are gardeners. They're not interested in the gardening side of it. They do like the produce, but nobody was green-fingered. So I was sort of thrown into it, I think, from that side. So there I was with my grandmother's gardening books, trying to figure out how to prune a rose, climbing roses especially, and that's how I just kept learning and trying to, I suppose, keep some of what they had originally built, and yeah, trying to learn as I went along.
I think we all come to gardening in different ways and with different reasons, but Maiju shared with me what she found out from a commercial grower that really prompted her to grow her own organic food. And I've got to be completely truthful, this was a huge surprise to me also.
He was really impressed the amount of stuff that was growing. And he said at one stage he used to work for a lettuce grower. He said from the beginning, when they were planted to the harvest, the place was sprayed 7 times. He said he hasn't eaten lettuce for a decade. And once I gave him the lettuce from our greenhouse, he said he was the happiest ever. He was so grateful. He said, I haven't eaten lettuce for so long, because he knows how it's grown. I just never thought of it. Because we're so used to farmers markets and let's say your farmer down the road, who you know is not spraying, but the big growers in the supermarkets. Unless it's marked organic, it's sprayed. And now I know. Yeah, and that's why I'm really trying to push to grow those essential foods that we do eat the most of, that if, like, and I know we're not self-sustainable by any means, but at least not all the food is coming from the supermarket. And if I can subsidize some of the foods that are grown inorganically by the supermarket growers, I can grow them at home, then I'll be happy. If I can buy organic goods from the shop and supplement my own growing produce, then I think that's good. So now my husband won't touch a lettuce from the shop. Slugs ate 3 times of my sowing a lettuce the other day. So I have luckily seedlings now in the kitchen growing, but it's like, I can't win this. And we need lettuce.
A great bit of advice that Maiju had was to build your garden slowly, bit by bit, rather than taking on too much too quickly. Well, something that is definitely an issue here, because I've taken on a really big garden all in one go.
So the garden even here is laid out in stages. There's parts of it that are 7 years old, there's parts of it that are only 2 years old, but it's really done just because that's the way it naturally progresses, rather than knowing that you take on all this big space in one go. It's more you build onto smaller areas. You say, okay, I can handle that area. I can deal with that much of a workload. And then think, okay, do I like this particular area? If it's ornamental, if it's vegetables, and you grow to that rather than getting yourself all overwhelmed. And definitely one thing what I've enjoyed is adding these type of semi-edible ornamentals to the vegetable side as well. It just keeps the colour going, keeps it happy. Something pretty to look at.
I also wanted to find out what makes Maiju tick when it comes to the garden. What does she get from it? So I've absolutely loved spending this afternoon in the garden, not only with you, but with Snowy. Aren't you gorgeous? But clearly this garden means the world to you. But what does gardening mean to you, or what does it bring to your life?
I think some part of it is like a bit of a therapy, just to get a de-stressor after weeks of work. And another is, it just grounds me. I think it just makes me realise what's real in life, especially the vegetable side of it. I'm surprised how growing vegetables has affected me. Positively, obviously, but rather than everything being pretty and nice to look at, that there's so much productivity that you could get out of your own garden. But yeah, I think it just grounds me that rather than just living in this consumerism, that there's something so basic out there that just could be on your doorstep. And you don't really need to go out for anything for that. It's just there, and you put work and effort into it, but it rewards you. Yeah.
I really love finding a new idea that I can bring home to this garden, and I certainly found that at Maiju's garden. So you'll most likely hear when one gardener goes and visits another gardener's garden that they get a load of inspiration and really good ideas. And sometimes I always thought that was maybe a little bit cliche, but truly I have learned something completely new today, to the extent that I really want to talk about it right now. And it's exactly what Maiju was talking about here, which is a fruit tree guild. I've never heard of the concept before, but look at it. Isn't it gorgeous? This really lovely mix of flowers, herbs, edibles, and fruit trees. And it is that mix of different things that, for me, just ticks every single box. I'm so impressed. And look at the colours around here. This, for me, is something special. And already I'm thinking, how can I make this happen in my garden? How can I get this fruit tree guild to work in my place? This is definitely going to happen. I absolutely love it. I really loved my time in Maiju's garden, and I hope that you've enjoyed not only getting to have a look around her place, which is beautiful, but also getting to know her a little bit better too. If you're not already a subscriber or a follower, head across to her YouTube channel, which is called Spuds and Roses, and her Instagram account, which is also called Spuds and Roses. Right, I'm going to get out of this rain. I'm off to look up fruit trees for my own fruit tree guild. Whee! I cannot wait. And until next time, see you later.